Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Alright, one final entry here based on your suggestions. Then I'm going to give this series a short rest, probably about month or two, and then get back to it for you. This particular suggestion has been suggested who knows how many times in the past. Even this go around, it's been suggested as well with several thumbs up from other people trying to make sure that I talk about it. The only reason I haven't is because it's so well known. Again, the whole key thing to my videos, whether it's this urban legends or whether it's the monsters and cryptids or the ghost spirits, it has to do with finding the most mundane stuff, that stuff that's still interesting. When we're talking about the big stuff, the all-star stuff that everyone knows about, I don't see much to talk about because there's so much information related to it. But as a huge favor to all of y'all, and then also as a huge thank you for your continued support, lots of new subscribers, lots of old subscribers as well. Thank you so much again. So I decided finally I would talk about it here. Now, for the sake of this particular urban legend, I'm going to just do it as one video offering what I feel is some of the best, I guess, precise, most efficient information possible. Clearly, there's so much more information related to it, but I don't want it to be like I did the Dyatlov Pass, where it was part ones up to part threes. It's too much work, it's too much time, and I wanted to make sure that everyone still gets the best possible with one video. So of course, the urban legend that I'm talking about is none other than the Philadelphia experiment. Very well known urban legend, still very controversial to this day, as it was a couple of decades back when it was first suggested. Clearly, it's a part of almost pop culture. You can ask anyone about the Philadelphia experiment and they will have some basic knowledge of it. There are who knows how many books written about the Philadelphia experiment. There are also movies, including a popular one I think in the 80s, and then of course there's also TV shows related to it. Every now and then there'll always be new series focused on it, new documentaries with new interviews, either with people from the alleged incident or people that knew people from the incident. So in other words, it's still as popular today as ever. So it had the interest in this urban legend has not died down. So hopefully the information that I'll present here, I'm just going to talk about the incident, like what led to it and what happened, and then some of the information as far as, I guess, like what happened afterward with the government. But that's about it. But there are so much more chapters related to it. So if you want to see the rest of this stuff, no doubt you can just do a quick search online. There's bound to be easy reach, easy access to it. But otherwise, for this video, just the best suggestion, like best synopsis of it. So what is the Philadelphia experiment? Again, it's something that occurred, and I say allegedly because to this day, the Navy and any other branch of the military, armed forces, naval forces, they still do not have any knowledge of this. Like they state, it has not occurred. There's no proof of this. They do not know, confirm or deny, that kind of stuff. So all of this is still alleged. So it happened way back when, during the time of World War II, specifically sometime around October. Although interestingly enough, there was a precursor of the Philadelphia experiment in the summer, in this case of 1943. Now what led to the Philadelphia experiment happening was this guy, Dr. Franklin Reno. According to the popular theories associated with him, he was someone that was keen on working on the military application known as the unified field theory. It's the idea that you can use some kind of electromagnetic radiation, some form of gravity, something along the lines where you can use that stuff along with some form of energy to bend light and then make things invisible. And this was very, very keen to be done in World War II because obviously it would have made a gigantic military asset. Imagine if it's something like it's the best analogy, but imagine having, like in Star Trek, the Klingons and their warships, the way that they cloak. Imagine having something like that on the United States side. How much of an asset would that be? So, according to, again, all the alleged information, the United States was very, very interested in this. They wanted to make sure that this experiment was approved and sponsored, and so they gave the go-ahead to this guy, Dr. Franklin Reno, although apparently, is there something else? Like his last name is also Reinhardt? Someone has to point that out to me. And then on top of that, there was a destroyer, a Navy destroyer, that was allowed for these experiments, the USS Eldridge, which you're looking at a picture of here. So that way, all of this stuff could be done, and it was done in Philadelphia to ensure that we could have, as the United States naval power, this fantastic new weapon. That's why it's called the Philadelphia experiment, because that's allegedly where it occurred. Now, the first set of tests happened in the summer of 1943. This was the precursor that I was talking about. Specifically, it was July 22nd. I don't know the science regarding it. I'm sure there's, again, books related to how you can take the bending of light, apply it with energy, use electronic or electromagnetic radiation, use some form of warping of gravity. It's all too technical, too scientific for me, but the way it was done during that day in secret. What a way. Imagine if you would have been there to see it. But apparently the Eldridge, the test was somewhat successful because the ship almost became invisible. The only difference was that there was a quote-unquote greenish fog that seemed to outline it. So it was there, but it was not gone completely, so it wasn't considered 100% successful. Interestingly enough, even during that precursor, the U.S. government decided, hey, let's go ahead, instead of just using the ship by itself, let's use some crew members as well. So they had some crew members there on the ship while the experiment was happening, and they were there on the ship when that greenish fog took its place and made itself not invisible, but still almost there. Now, what happened, of course, was the crew members, they decided, they said that they were feeling funny. Some of them were feeling a little nauseous, some extremely nauseous afterward. But again, the test was considered not a successful one because it wasn't completely invisible. Although apparently it was invisible to radar, but not to, let's say, to the eyes, like to someone as a human watching from across the way, because that was also part of the experiment. Now, because of this, it was toyed around. I don't know what was done in terms of scientific applications, but this testing was done yet again a little later on that year. We have to go forward to October 28th, 1943. And then this time, with the tweaking of the tests, and then this time with new research, they were able to turn on the experiment, and lo and behold, it became invisible. Completely invisible. So much so that it was reported that it vanished completely from sight with a giant flash of blue light. So I would imagine it's something, again, to use like a Star Trek analogy, like when on the show Next Generation, when the Enterprise, let's say, went to warp, there was always that famous shot of it, bright flash, and then it disappears in a blink of an eye right there. So I imagine it looked like something along that line. This time, though, the experiment, the way it worked well too well. And what I mean is this: there was inadvertent side effect. So again, this is all alleged stuff, but if the urban legend is true, not only did it disappear, but it inadvertently teleported somewhere else. Because, and this is where the information gets really sensational. I mean, this is like science fiction stuff that's real exciting. So it teleported to another location 600 kilometers or 375 miles away. There in Norfolk, Virginia, there's a U.S. naval base that's there, and it teleported there. Witnesses stated that for several minutes they saw the USS Eldridge suddenly appear right there on that naval base, while at the same time, obviously like in the Philadelphia side, people saw the ship disappear. So it became invisible on one side and then appeared almost 400 miles away in another side. And then the way it was reported was it kept staying there. Like, I guess it was there, but seemed like it was waving, like there was some kind of, it looked right, but it didn't look 100% right, in other words. So after about a couple of minutes, then it disappeared, in this case from the Virginia side, and then it reappeared back in Philadelphia. So the inadvertent side effect was none other than teleportation. Again, straight from Star Trek. Here you have all of a sudden something appearing hundreds of miles away, while at the same time not being someplace else it should have been. Now here's where stuff gets really scary. Unfortunately, remember how the precursor, there was the severe nausea that a lot of the crew members seem to have. In this case though, the way the experiment was tweaked and it looks like it was quote unquote successful, too successful in other words, the side effects for the crew members, you would be it's surprising that they still had crew members on the ship, because considering again how the reports previously were that a lot of them suffered severe nausea, you would think that the government would have taken a more of a cautious side, but no. In this case, they were still on the ship when the experiment, the second one, was happening. Now, though, the side effects were horrific, almost like straight out of a horror movie. This is the stuff that every single documentary and report having to do with Philadelphia experiment always states. People were saying that some crew members were completely unaccounted for. Like, they were on the ship in Philadelphia, then maybe or not maybe they were on the ship when it appeared in Virginia, but then when they reappeared back in Philadelphia, they were no longer there. They were gone. Like, supposedly unaccounted for, supposedly vanished. But the stuff that gets really, really sickening, the ones that still stayed on the ship happens to either A, have some kind of strange illness, like there was a mental illness as a result, almost associated with schizophrenia. So their mind was there, but their mind wasn't there. They were having some severe mental side effects. Others reported that for a short time period, they would fade in and out of let's say appearance. So they were vanishing in front of people's eyes and then coming back. They're fading in and out of sight. And then the most horrific news seems to be that some of the crew members were actually fused right into the bulk or the metal of the ship itself. So how horrific is that? Apparently with this teleportation, the people that were there, the crew members, whenever they came back to the Philadelphia side, this teleportation didn't work 100%. It's the nightmare that you would think anything involving teleportation side effects, where all of a sudden the way they were brought back, the atoms, the molecules, however it was done, they weren't rearranged the right way, and so some of them were actually fused within the bulkhead or within the ship. And this horrible, horrible vision. I mean, imagine that. Imagine seeing someone with the, let's say, from the neck up, just completely gone inside a block of metal, or let's say others from the waist down struggling to get out from the floor that they were fused under there. So those are the most horrific news associated with this urban legend. Now clearly, with the results A, failing on the vanishing side because it caused a teleportation by accident. You don't want that to happen, obviously, when you're doing a military battle of some sort. You don't want to end up at the wrong place hundreds of miles away. And then B, clearly failing with the crew having to experience all those horrible effects. The Navy by this point decided that was it. They canceled the experiment. They were not going to go forward. And then here's where things get a little murky, because clearly they wanted to make sure that nobody has access to the sensitive information or what was caused or what happened to the crew members, because that would just be like the worst thing to happen in the Navy at that time. It would be sensational news. You would have so many people in trouble. And so apparently, and again things get murky here, there was a lot of brainwashing that was done with all the people who had knowledge of the Philadelphia experiment in order to ensure that the details of that experience were gone, so people couldn't get in trouble or sensitive information could not be passed around as to what occurred. So where proof of this occurs, I have no idea. All of this stuff seems to be just they heard it from someone, nothing really concrete. So as far as if any surviving crew members, like who knows and who knows what, and who doesn't know other stuff, it's still up in the air. And of course, with a lot of this happening decades back, many of those crew members are now deceased or on their last days. So slowly, little by little, those that have the concrete information, especially true eyewitness accounts of this experiment, they are slowly going away, and not just let's say psychologically with the Philadelphia experiment, like the way it happened with some of the crew members, but in another case by being deceased because of old age. So that's the status, at least with the Philadelphia experiment. Did it happen? Who knows? Again, the Navy still to this day states no, that clearly nothing like this happened. It's all rumors. How it came about, by the way, and again, I'm not going to talk too much on this side, but how these rumors came about happens to be the reason I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's just way too much info. This will be a whole another set of videos again to talk about. But there was a guy by the name of Morris K. Jessup. Apparently he wrote a book called The Case for the UFO, where he was talking about how UFOs are speculated, how they're able to fly, how they're able to ascend, how they're able to, I guess, go through space. And somehow there was some person named Carlos Allende who used that book to make a bunch of annotations. Apparently it was him, but he also apparently went by the name of Carl M. Allen. He sent a book to a place called the Office of Naval Research with a bunch of annotations apparently that are done extensively throughout the margins of the book, and also done by two other people. Someone named Jemmy, and then Mr. A and Mr. B. Although there's potentially the idea that Mr. A and Mr. B are Allen. It's real murky. I tried to see more information about all this stuff, but it seems weird. Someone may have to explain it better in one of the comments below. But in any case, those annotations talked about the Philadelphia experiment and how it could tie to the stuff that this guy Morris K. Jessup was writing in his book. I don't know though if Morris K. Jessup necessarily had knowledge of the Philadelphia experiment, but the way he wrote it, apparently these other guys, they put it in the annotations, and that in itself became a popular edition. It's called the Annotated Varro edition, and that in itself led to the Philadelphia experiment slowly gaining more popularity to the point that we have it as it is today, because in the 50s then it turned into the 60s and then the 70s with more information from those annotations and more people coming forward, until finally, of course, things blew open in the 80s with that Philadelphia Experiment movie, which was a somewhat popular movie, but that's where it stayed in pop culture to this day. So lots more info though with all that stuff, but that's essentially how the Philadelphia Experiment came to be in terms of public knowledge, like people knowing about it, and it all started interesting enough with that book. So anyways, that's the info, the stuff that I wanted to share at least with the Philadelphia experiment. If anyone has any more information that they feel is extremely relevant, something that you wanted to just add and share with everyone here about it, please post it in the comments below. If anyone knows any more other experiments that might have occurred related to it, but that haven't, I guess, had that impact, or that were tied to it, that would be great to hear too. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.